Alex.
And I'm Shane.
This is the RPM podcast.
And welcome back to another RPM Roundup. And today's topic of this conversation is, what if RPM decided the F1 calendar? Now, this is just going to be a bit of fun about the current calendar, and we're going to talk about what tracks we would quite happily lose off the current calendar and what tracks we would like to bring in. It's going to be a bit of a to and fro, so we're going to take it in turns, and it could get a bit brutal, I'm not going to lie. I don't know what your favourite tracks are. I have an idea, but it might cause some controversy. You never know, but this is the entertainment we like to provide. So, Alex, over to you. A track you would like to lose off the current Formula One calendar.
Okay, well, I'm going in with big guns to begin with.
Okay.
This is potentially controversial, but I'm going to start with Monte Carlo.
Okay. That is controversial, but not towards me. It's not towards me. I completely agree. To be honest.
So Monte Carlo, lots of history and romance, and I get it. Historical track. Obviously,
but the cars are 2 meters wide.
Yeah, the Saturdays are interesting. Obviously, you're seeing the drivers right on the edge. It is a good show of individual driver skill on qualifying. But I don't know about you, Shane, but I watch Formula One for this thing called racing. And there really isn't any racing that goes on at Monte Carlo.
Oh, there really isn't, is it? I think
any overtakes that do happen usually involve elbowing your way through sort of slowly and ungracefully, or hoping that the car in front of you bins it or something. Or what happened to Ricardo, that your pit stop gets ruined, and so you get a sort of free pass.
Yeah.
And a team can lose a significant amount of car performance and still hold their position with relative ease, because like you said, the cars are massive, but there's just no way, maybe, I don't know, 20, 30 years ago when the cars were much smaller and lighter, it was different. But these days, it
probably
just
half
doesn't
the
work.
size.
Yeah.
Yeah,
they do look a lot
stunning
smaller
track.
when you see them next to each other.
Sky Sports did a piece last year. It was Nico with his father racing their iconic F1 cars, and you just see the size difference in them. It's like, blind me. Now I can see why this was a fantastic circuit, and don't get me wrong, it's beautiful when it's sunny. You've got the harbour, you've got the yachts, you've got the money, you've got the casino. It's a grand place to race, but the circuit is just not built for a modern F1 car. And I feel like that might be a phrase we use in this little segment quite a lot, talking about modern F1 cars, but I completely agree. I feel like I would like to have it as a yearly event. Don't get me wrong, maybe on when we have like the 6-week break, or when we have a break in Formula One, maybe whether it be 3 weeks or 2 weeks, to do like an old school parade kind of thing at Monaco, like parade all the old Formula One cars. That would be a great place to produce history and showcase all those cars, because it's such a stunning track. But not racing, not for a modern Formula One car. It's so boring.
The thing is, as well, is that it's not necessarily limited to the current era of cars. I mean, yes, they are big, and the nature of the way they work means that they have to be that size in many ways. But even I remember in 2003, Montoya won the race. And it was one of the few times in F1 history where there were no on-track overtakes in the entire race. Even the drivers have said that it's boring. Like, I remember, I think it was a couple of years ago, Hamilton was talking about trying to get them to change the track or alter it in places, make it longer, because even the drivers themselves said it was boring, and that it was just, after a while, it became just, we are literally now going in circles because you can't get
It is a scare electric. It is a scare electric. Because there's no overtaking opportunities. Turn 1 is the overtaking opportunity and coming out the tunnel, but you come out that tunnel a bit blindsided if the weather is not in your favour, and then you've got a really short braking distance, and it's just doesn't do it for me. So controversial, I'm sure, for a lot of F1 fans out there, but I completely agree with you.
Okay, so Shane, next one then. A track you'd like to lose. It's your turn.
I'm going to go for a lot less controversial one, and given its recent performance, Russia. What a load of rubbish. That was a purposely built track.
So Sochi or Russia? Do you want to get rid of Russia, or do you want to get rid of the Russian Grand Prix, or do you want to get rid of Sochi?
I would like to get rid of the Russian Grand Prix, Sochi, the track.
Okay.
It's a purpose-built track, and it doesn't produce good racing, and it doesn't inspire good racing, and it's not. I've driven the track on the Formula One game a couple of times, and it's just not interesting. And if I feel like that playing a video game, I'm sure the drivers also feel like that racing around. Like a couple of them gave it quite harsh criticism this year due to the nature of turn 2 and 3. We discussed that in our last podcast, our last post race discussion. That was, but it just doesn't inspire me. It's a boring track. What do you say? Turn 3 is pretty cool. That's about it.
Yeah, it's another track to have the unenviable distinction of recording no on-track overtakes. Again, that was in 2017. It's flat. There's just loads of boring corners. The turn 3, as you mentioned, is fun. I also really like the end of the DRS zone and the entry into turn 14. That's quite a legitimately exciting overtaking opportunity.
It is actually, yeah.
But there's just very little else to take from it. It's not one of the worst offenders on the list that I've got here, at least in front of me. But it is just dull, and I find it baffling that professionals can be paid, no doubt, fairly significant amounts of money to design a circuit for use in the premier motorsport category that has so many bleeding flat 90-degree corners. There's nobody saying to these people, just don't make the corners flat and 90 degrees, because a child could draw a more interesting track than that.
Literally, a child could scribble and it would become more of an interesting track.
Maybe there were some other limitations involved in it that we don't know of. Maybe financial. I have no idea, but it's dreadfully dull, and it's a shame that a track could be introduced and built so recently and comparatively, and yet
that's what's shocking.
Nothing interesting about it.
Like at least Monaco and Monte Carlo has his heritage, it has history, and I can understand why it's kind of still on the calendar, despite the fact it doesn't produce a great deal of racing. But Russia was built this decade. Like it's been built this decade for this type of racing, and it's so uninspiring. It's just unbelievable how bad that track is.
I mean, I know I literally just said there's nothing interesting about it. That's obviously hyperbole. I mean, it's not a completely irredeemable track, but surely Russia's a big country. Surely we can do better.
Yeah, there's got to be something else out there in that country, which produces a lot better racing.
Yeah, Sochi definitely on my list too. Would not miss it.
Fair enough. I completely agree.
My turn.
Go ahead.
Okay, let's go for another track, but a much older one. Let's go for Catalonia.
Oh, okay.
Now,
I agree. That was on my list.
Catalonia might make for a good testing track. It does test the cars in lots of different ways, but it really shouldn't be on the calendar. It's not a bad track in general, but its familiarity with the drivers and the teams does make it a little bit too procedural. And the design of the corners, because there's lots of high speed, medium high speed corners that are quite long, and I think it just makes it battling in the current cars very difficult. Again, it's kind of a victim of the way that the cars are currently designed, but it's also, like I mentioned, they have so much data and already understand the track so well that everyone is able to bring the absolute maximum every weekend. So you can kind of basically guess what the lineup is going to be.
Yeah, absolutely.
Overtaking is not. I mean, DRS is quite powerful there because you've got that long straight that's going downhill into the first turn. But I don't really remember many good races there. It's pretty dull.
When Hamilton and Nico took themselves out.
Oh,
and
yeah.
Max won it.
I suppose there's that, yeah.
There was that one good race one time.
But if the most interesting thing about your track is that two drivers went into each other there, then that's probably
by accident.
Yeah, that probably says more about the track than a negative than positive.
Do you think it would? Do you think your opinion would change if there was a different layout for testing and then a race? So what I'm talking about is testing at the current track and then maybe opening up the last turn, so getting rid of that last chicane for the race. It would give it a little bit of a slight variance. Would open up, that back straight even more. Maybe produce some more close action, or you're happy just to bin it altogether? Keep it for testing, I'm assuming.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think a testing track should be on the calendar. I think full stop. It just shouldn't be on the calendar. Wherever they test should not be somewhere that they're also racing. As we've seen with this season, going to places that are unfamiliar brings surprises because they don't have all of this data that they can already draw on. And the sport is so heavily data driven now that you can model everything that's going to happen hypothetically in the race. That we should be trying to avoid that as much as possible.
Absolutely.
I would rather go back to Valencia, and that's saying something because that's not a super interesting track either, but that's at least produced a classic race. So yeah, Catalonia it shouldn't be any testing tracks on the calendar. Basically, that's my reasoning.
I agree. I agree, and I think Formula One in future are starting to they're gonna add the odd circuit here and there every year to keep things fresh. And as we've seen this year, it's worked. Limited testing, limited data produces some good racing.
Mhm.
So yeah, I completely agree. Catalonia, bin it off.
Over to you.
To me. I don't know if you're going to find this controversial or not. This is quite exciting because we know each other quite well, and
We're
we
just
know our
binning them left,
Formula
right, and centre. There's gonna be 4
all of
tracks
them.
left on the calendar at this rate, isn't there?
It's going to be Imola 4 times.
Yeah.
Hopefully, it produces a good race. You don't know. Next on my list, Alex, is Yas Marina.
Oh God! What? Please, can we get rid of Yas Marina?
It's so bad, right? And let me just rephrase that. I quite like Sector 1. Coming out of the pit straight, got that 90-degree left-hander, and then it's got a really nice and interesting up to the left, and then banks round to the right. It doesn't bank round to the right at all. It just goes to the right and then goes back down a hill. I find it a really interesting, like Sector 1. That's about it, really. I don't like Sector 3 because it doesn't really provide any overtaking opportunities at all because it's Monaco-esque, or Sector 3 reminds me of Sector 3 of Mexico and Sector 3 of Russia. We've got all these circuits which have these really tight, narrow Sector 3s and produces no overtaking, and I don't know why we keep on going there. But, and especially what really annoys me about Yas Marina is its position on the calendar, and that being last. Okay, don't get me wrong, it's a lovely country. The track looks spectacular. It's a night race. You've got the lights in the hotel. It looks impressive, don't get me wrong. But so does Bahrain in the night. Other tracks in the nighttime look good as well. In my personal opinion, I don't want to go off on a tangent. Let's go back to Brazil for the final race, or just introduce another track. I think I'm going to go off on a tangent again. What we've experienced this year in 2020 is visiting different tracks at different times of year. Therefore, the temperature of the climate being different in these countries, and it's produced some interesting races. Take Great Britain for example. It was a lot colder than what we're used to because we usually race there in July, and we raced there a lot later this year. Same with Spain. The climate was a little bit colder, so it threw up a couple of interesting races. I just don't like Yas Marina. The racing's boring. It's too predictable, and it shouldn't be the end of a Formula One calendar because it's not good.
Yeah, we desperately need Brazil back as the finale again.
I agree.
A place that actually loves motorsport. To
their core as well.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And there's a chance of rain in Brazil as well. Like, why go to the desert for the final race? And you're going to have 100% dry race with the humidity is going to be high. The weather's going to be so predictable. It doesn't throw any kind of strategy mix up or any kind of like opportunities. Like, for example, the German Grand Prix did last year. And, countless times we've had rain and, midfield teams have come through. But that's never going to happen at this track because it's never going to rain. Yeah,
you said that the country is lovely. I mean, I don't want to dump on the country itself. I've never been there. I'm sure it's very nice, but yeah, where it's set is it's just another track in the middle of the desert, and because they do it at night, it's not going to rain. There's not really any weather factors. It's mostly flat, like you said. The first little bit in Sector 1, they designed that bit and then got bored and just made everything else flat and complete imitation with no atmosphere. Sector 3 might be the most boring sector on the calendar. It's just nothing. It's just a nothing sector. There's a bit of a kink, and then it's 90 degrees right, left, right. It's nothing. It's just 90-degree corners, the whole thing.
And I don't want to go back to Russia, but Sector 3 Russia, I believe, is 90-degree left, right. It just doesn't work, right? For a Sector 3, you should be fighting for position going across the line. That's how you end a F1 racetrack, for example, like Brazil. Gasly and Hamilton they weren't jostling for position, don't get me wrong, but Gasly steaming past Hamilton on that back straight because the track just slowly opened up into that corner, not with 4 90-degree turns before it.
Yeah.
Someone's going to ask us in the comments to design our perfect track, and I'm excited but also nervous.
You have to get paint out.
Oh God, yeah. Okay, so I've binned off Yas Marina. Alex, is there any more you would like to bin off? I feel like there is. I feel like you've got a couple more up your sleeve.
I've got one more, and again, this is one I'm sure we'll both agree with, and I think you already know what it's going to be. It's the Circuit Paul Ricard.
Oh my goodness. I've got the current F1 calendar up in front of me, which is why it's not on there. Yes, France, bin it off. I'm done with it.
The Circuit Paul Ricard is appalling. It's just so dull. It's yet another flat, boring track where every single corner it's like X, but boring. You've got the fast right-hander, which is kind of like 130R, but boring. You've got the sort of bit where it tries to do a bit of a jink left-right, where it's almost like it's meant to be a Senna S, but it's boring. You've got the kind of fast left-hander into the long straight, like many other tracks, but again, it's boring.
You've got a pit exit, which just entices an accident. Like, why would you have a pit exit
that goes across the
racing line into a really heavy braking corner? Blimey, who thought of that? I don't know. Oh,
and the entry's pretty bad as well. Didn't they have to change the entry at one point?
They changed it, haven't they? Yeah, it was on the pit straight, wasn't it? Or was it before? It was. They've changed it. I can't remember because the F1 game patched it and then repatched it. I can't remember. It's not a race I particularly enjoy. So
there's ludicrous amounts of runoff. There isn't really much of a penalty for going off because you can basically keep driving for another 10 miles and you won't hit anything.
So what you're saying is the track's rubbish. It's an eyesore for the fans because when you've got the helicopter cam, all you can see is red, white, and blue. And the fans which have attended every year so far have ended up queuing for like 20 hours to get into the circuit because it comes off a B road. Like, it's just woefully awful for every single person involved.
Those stripes on the ground, especially like you say when you get the helicopter views, they make me feel like I've got screen burn when I'm watching it.
Yes, exactly.
You know on those old like cathode ray tube monitors where if you had the same picture on it, and plasma monitors actually, you have the same picture on it for too long, it burns onto the screen. That's the way I feel watching Paul Ricard. Just lines. All I can see is lines for the next hour. Like,
and you got bits of tarmac going off on the left and bits of tarmac going off on the right. I'm like, the first year we went there, I was like, where does the track go? I can't see. Like, there's no definition in this track.
It has approximately 300 different layouts, doesn't it? Like, they just put little cones on.
Yeah, literally. Yeah, just a cone. I can't see that from the helicopter cam where the track's meant to go, but just
even Magny-Cours would be better.
You know what? It's got that.
Would be better.
Sector 2, it's got that chicane, hasn't it? I wasn't quite sure. It is a chicane. You're going 190, back down to 50, back up to 190. Yeah, let them floor it.
They just stuck it in the middle.
An overtaken. I know. I was like, they clearly, they've got the track there because they've just coned it off. Like you said, they put some polystyrene boards there and there's like, oh, we might have an overtake here. Oh, no, wait, we'll go around the chicane. Hamilton's still in the lead. Right, good. Carry on. It just doesn't bring anything to the sport. Blimey, that's almost 20 minutes of like tracks we want to bin off. I don't think I've got any other ones. Are you done with Paul Ricard? Are you?
Yeah, I don't want to talk about that track anymore. It is offensively bland.
I'm pretty content. China. It's just not a great track. No, I'm not a fan of China, to be honest. I think what stands out for me is the 1,000th Grand Prix we had there. And it was the most boring Grand Prix I think I've ever watched until Paul Ricard came on the next year. But it was just horrendous. Like it's an old track. It's been around for a while. And it has some overtaking opportunities. I mean, it's a fast track, but it doesn't really do it for me. This was my iffy one. If I needed to plug one out, pull one out of the hat, this was going to be the one it is. I don't like the track, to be fair, and I've not really seen many good races there. So don't know how you feel about that.
Yeah, it's not. I don't know. It doesn't immediately strike me as a bad track. I think it's somewhat similar to Paul Ricard in the sense that there's a lot of corners that are like another famous corner, but just not as good. The first turn where it kind of goes up in that little spiral and goes in is kind of intriguing. There's that very fast corner coming out into the long straight at the end, which is very wide, and you can get like the Kemmel straight. You can get like 4 cars wide easily on that bit because of how big it is. But yeah, it's not an outstanding track. I don't know if I didn't put it on my list. I didn't immediately think of it being a bad track, but would I miss it if it left? Probably not.
Exactly. That's the thing. And this is our perfect calendar, so well, not perfect. This is as near perfect as I can get.
Any more tracks?
No, I'm happy with the ones I've binned off.
Yeah.
So, flipping the switch, Alex. Moving forward, what tracks would you add to the F1 calendar?
So I set myself a few rules for deciding on these tracks
Oh,
because
blimey, I didn't.
I tried to pick tracks that could conceivably happen. So not tracks that there would be no way of altering them to make them work. Like you couldn't have something like don't know, you couldn't really have something like Brands Hatch, for example, because you couldn't really alter the track
It's
in
not a
such a way to
Class
make
A,
it
is
work.
it? It's
Yeah,
not.
like
It's not built for that
it's
speed.
not really possible to actually alter the track to make it up to modern standards for Formula One anyway.
Mm.
And also, I didn't include any of the tracks that we are going to be racing on for 2020 this year. So I didn't put Imola or Istanbul Park or anything like that on it.
Oh, blimey! Because
So I didn't put those on because we're
this
going
would be
to race on them this year. So
true. Well, in that case, those are a couple of my tracks. To be fair, so I'll be looking at you for your input on the later stages of this conversation. Then,
yeah, I mean they're great tracks, and by all means, we should talk about them. But the first one that I'm going to throw in for a track I'd like to add is going to be the Bud International Circuit in India.
okay,
I think this is actually a very well designed modern track that has a lot of different challenges for a driver. We ran there for about 3 years. I think it was 2011 to 2013. It was well liked by a lot of the drivers at the time, and that turn 10 and 11 especially is good fun and is kind of similar to the Spoon corner at Suzuka.
yes, I've just had to get the track up, but I remember this.
Vettel
Yep.
obviously won all of the races that were held there because that was during his
Yep.
domination period. But there's lots of elevation changes too. There's like 14-meter rise in the first 3 corners. And it was regarded by a lot of the drivers at the time to be one of the most challenging tracks on the circuit. So it brings a lot of technical challenges for the teams as well. And it would be nice to race in India again because we've had some good Indian racing drivers. It's a good setting for it. I think it was quite a good modern track, and it's kind of hard to believe that it was designed by the same dude who designed Sochi.
The same guy who designed Circuits of America as well.
Yeah. Obviously, Tilke's got
clearly had an off day.
Yeah, I can only assume that either he just wasn't very inspired when he was doing that one, or he had some kind of limitations to deal with, like you mentioned. But when it comes to the Bud International Circuit, I thought it was a good track, and it was a shame to see it go. I believe there was some kind of tax dispute, or it's a combination of that and them not having enough ticket sales. I think where they just
It's
never.
it's normally financial reasons, isn't it? As to why we
They
don't.
spent like
return.
$400 million or so, or the equivalent of about $400
Wow.
billion building it, and it's basically just sat there since then. It seems like a terrible waste because it's a good track.
Which is a nice segue actually onto a track I would like to reintroduce to the calendar, and we are going back to this year, and that's going back to Turkey. So Istanbul Park. I was always a massive fan of that circuit. It produced some good racing. We last raced there, I think, in 2013 potentially. It was this decade we raced there. And it was, I think it was a really good track, and I was surprised to see it go. And I'm not looked into it as much as you have, unfortunately, but I'm not sure the reasons as to why it's going. But I'm really happy that we're going back there this year. It's just been left dormant, like you said, a bit like the that Indian track. It's just been left there to age. So I'll be quite impressed to see how well the Istanbul circuit scrubs up after almost a decade of not being used. I believe it was a car park at some point, but we'll see. It's just got some really, really nice flowing corners, especially sector 2 and sector 3. I've got the map up here, but we've got a really quite some long straights.
It's turn 8, isn't it? Turn 8 is that fast one.
Yes, and I think I don't know if it'll be flat this year. A lot of people have been talking about it, but I remember playing it on Grid Autosport or Grid 1, I think it was actually. Yeah, and I was racing touring cars, and it was always unnerving to try and hold it all the way around turn 8 to that flat. And I can't imagine what it would be like to do it on a Formula 1 game. I might have to boot up one of the old games for Windows Live games, but and see what it's like. But definitely Istanbul Park. I thoroughly enjoyed racing it as a kid and on the F1 series, and it had some good races there. It's a shame we don't have it.
Yeah, definitely agree. Great track. Okay, my next one is another circuit that was raced on fairly recently for some time as well, and that's the Sepang International Circuit in Malaysia.
Yes.
Was raced on from 99 to 2017. Another very challenging track, another very sweeping track. There's something about that final hairpin that always seems so crucial coming into the main straight. And all of the straights themselves are just the right kind of long. You know, sometimes it feels like a straight, like the Mexico straight is almost like kind of
It's too long, isn't it?
braggadociously long. You know, like look at how
Yeah.
long my straight is. It's ridiculously long.
And we can hit up to speeds of like 210 miles per hour. And it's like, well, okay.
Yeah, it is kind of cool. I think it's fun to see the cars going that fast, but it does reach a point where the straight is so long that it either makes, again, with the current era, it either makes the DRS too powerful and you sail past people before you even get to the braking point. I mean, everybody likes to see an overtake that has to happen in the braking zone.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
But if your straight is ridiculously long, then if somebody's got the advantage, then they're already well past them by that point. And obviously, if they're too short, then it just feels like a bit of a token. So yeah, Sepang gets that absolutely right, and the nature of the climate as well meant that the weather was a huge factor at Sepang. I mean, you never know when just a monsoon would suddenly kick in the middle of the race, and it would just throw everything, throw all your plans out the window.
And we go, we've had that conversation already. Like with unpredictable climates produce the best races. Take Brazil, for instance.
There was something iconic about it as well. When it has, the way that has the stands, when it has the just the way that the roofs of those stands, the kind of big umbrella style stands.
Yes.
When it was first introduced as a track, I remember seeing it as a kid when it first came in. I remember thinking it looked really kind of stylish and modern and exciting, and that it was something quite iconic about it at the time.
But now it feels traditional. Now it feels like a well embedded track. I get what you mean. At the time of it being introduced, it was wow. This is state of the art. This is nice. I mean, I use the word nice, but this was a really nice looking track. And now I look at that, look at some photos and think, actually, no, that's a traditional track. That's a good track. We should go racing there. Look at that. That's what racing is. It's got racing written all over it. It's not got Scale Electric written all over it. This is where racing happens.
It seems old school by comparison to something like Paul Ricard or Yas Marina or something.
But old school is maybe what we need. You never know.
Yeah.
To spice things up. All right.
Okay, what next, Shane? What are you adding?
Have a guess.
Have a guess?
Yeah, have a guess.
Well, as you mentioned it earlier, so Imola 4 times?
No. It's actually Imola wasn't on my list, and I'll go into that later on just because, well, we'll see what the new track layout provides. Obviously, the current withstanding track layout maybe won't be as forgiving to recent, to modern Formula One cars. It might not provide what we want it to provide.
Yeah, true.
But moving forward, Nürburgring. Why did we stop racing there? I mean, I know why we stopped racing there because it's not called the German Grand Prix. It's called the Eiffel Grand Prix because I believe there is a copyright or contractual infringement by calling it the German Grand Prix, as we haven't actually had a race at the German Grand Prix this year. And obviously, there's been conversations going back and forth with regards to the German Grand Prix and how long we'll be racing there anyway. But the Nürburgring, and I don't use the word again, traditional, iconic racing track. That's all I've got to say. It's one of the best, and I can't believe we ever stopped going there. It was looking at the track now, like I'm looking at the track map. It just looks fantastic. It just really, really looks fantastic. I'm looking at turn 7. And it's not like an overtaking corner. It's basically a 180 turn, but quite spread out. It's quite a wide turn with gravel on the outside, gravel on the inside. And it's a fast right-hander, don't get me wrong, but it's basically a U-bend. But it just screams out traditional racing. It screams out, actually, if the overtake hasn't been done into that corner, by God, you got to be watching it when we come out of that corner because it doesn't crucify drivers because it's not a massively heavy braking zone. You could probably follow through there quite easily. And then you've got a really decent part of the track going out afterwards. I can't wait. I literally can't wait. When is that race? Is it next? I believe it's next.
Yes. At
I
the
think
time
it's
of
next
recording,
Sunday.
yeah. At
Oh,
time
it's
of
a week
recording, it is
today.
the next one.
I can't wait, and I really hope it doesn't disappoint because it's one of my favorite tracks out there, and I think it deserves a place permanently on the F1 calendar.
Has a corner named after Michael Schumacher, doesn't it?
It does, yeah. Turn 8. So after turn 7, yeah. Obviously after turn 7. I was looking at the track map.
Yeah, I can't quite put my finger on it, but there is something about those older school tracks that even when you just look at the track map, they just kind of look like what you expect an exciting track to look like. Whereas some of
Mm,
the more modern ones, just looking at the track layout, it just looks really artificial. And you can see
yeah.
that there's just too many kind of like, oh, we did a little 90-degree thing there, we did a little 90-degree thing here, and then at this bit we realized we need an interesting corner. So here's a really long round one. Yeah, whereas when you look at the Nürburgring, it looks fast, it looks flowing, but it also has challenging, shorter, tighter corners as well. And
Yeah.
yeah, I agree. It's
It
exciting. It's
does
going to be
it
exciting
does
to see it
worry
back.
me a little bit that I remember 10 years ago racing there, and it'd be fast flowing, and actually the short tight corners were also very interesting because we had cars of a spec where it wouldn't crucify them following through in all these corners and going for
Hmm.
like a late overtake. So it does worry me a little bit that a modern Formula One car will get bogged down in sector one, 1, 2, 3, and 4, the turns there. I'm hoping that it's got a lot of long straights. It's got a lot of fast flowing corners. Even even at today's standards, those cars are gonna absolutely fly through there. Just hope it doesn't disappoint, because if it doesn't, then I can see a couple of these tracks coming back permanently. Hopefully, it would be good.
Yeah, looking forward to it for sure.
Mm. Stand by for our post race discussion.
So I think to add on to that, you mentioned not having a German Grand Prix.
Yeah.
At least an honourable mention has to be the Hockenheimring.
Yes.
I think hopefully it is going to come back anyway, or at least it seems to be that way. But obviously, we need to have this track back. I rather like the Hockenheimring. I know that it feels a little neutered compared to the old version, the older and longer version. But it's still a good track. It still provides some good racing, especially like the rainy one that we saw last year.
Yes. Blimey. Yeah. No one expected that drag slip to be that slippery.
Yeah, yeah. That last corner in the rain is absolutely lethal. It's sort of
Yeah.
almost soapy in the way that the
Yeah.
cars seem to
Yeah.
like glide across it.
Bernie wasn't
So
wrong a couple of years ago by putting the sprinklers out and making an artificial rain. This is all his fault. This is all his
yeah,
doing.
Bernie
It's got
probably wanted like people with super soakers by the side of the track.
Yes, yeah. Whoever's leading, get them soaking wet. It's got a really nice turn 6, which is the hairpin, and it's one of the tightest hairpins we've seen on an F1 track. I can't remember. I can't think of anything close to it. Obviously, we haven't raced at the I've forgotten the name of the street circuit we were going to go to this year, which was a lot of 90-degree corners and hairpins. But
Mm.
turn 6, it's a very tight hairpin with a very long straight before it, and we've seen some really good dives going in there. Correct me if I'm wrong. I'm pretty sure we saw Hamilton, whether he had a grid penalty or he fell back at the start of the race, but he made a comeback through this race a couple of years ago, and I just remember him like banging wheels with Jensen Button, trying to get through this hairpin, like giving it all. And I thought, you know what, that is a good overtaking corner. Whether and it doesn't seem that the overtakes get done before it. It seems they always happen just at the right time, just as they're going into that braking zone. And then it's got a lovely turn, sector 3 as well. So the track's quite wide actually. Sector 1 and sector 2. It's got some. You can get 3 or 4 cars wide there, especially turn 7. It's a really quick flick to the right. But then you do go into a single file sector 3. But unlike the ones we've spoken before, where they're 90-degree turners left and right, turn 12 and 13 are, they're actually banked corners. There's a lot of gradient there, and it's unforgiving, as we've seen. I think we saw Vettel go off at turn 12 before
Yeah.
into some, into the sponsor boards, into the gravel, and then into the sponsor board, and it's unforgiving that track. Like sector 3 is covered in gravel either side and a bit of grass. So if you're going off, you got to make sure you got your foot planted enough to do a George Russell in qualifying and get back on, or you're not coming back onto that track, as we witnessed a couple of years ago. Was it last year we had that amazing race? It was last year we had that
Yeah.
incredible race, where so many teams just well, everyone's seen it, so you don't need to
Yeah.
explain it. But Yeah, good
A
track.
lot of people were caught out.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, really like that track, to be fair.
And Hulkenberg binned another chance at a podium.
Oh, bad times. Hulkenberg, yeah. That's a tough one, that is.
But yeah, Hockenheim Ring, hopefully it will come back next year. It feels kind of wrong not to have a German Grand Prix. So hopefully we'll see the Hockenheim Ring sooner rather than later.
I agree. And moving on to my final one, and yeah, you've guessed it. It's Imola, just for its history. And I'm glad it's coming back this year, but I'm a bit worried it won't be as good as I want it to be. I'm a bit worried that the track I don't know. I just haven't. I'm going to pass over to you while I gather my thoughts on this one. So Imola, Alex, what do you think?
Well, obviously it has it has a very legendary status. Not least because of the deaths of Ayrton Senna and Roland Ratzenberger there. And it's known for being sort of very fast and known for having lots of chicanes, but it's going to be pretty heavily modified. Like you say,
To accommodate,
I think
isn't it?
Yeah, I think you're right to that we may see a very, very different race to what we might expect because of the nature of the current cars. The classic circuit is it has all these kind of, I'm just looking at the track map of the old one now. So yeah, it's got all these sort of long, fast straights mixed up with really tight chicanes. There's lots of little kinks in some of the faster sections. That in itself looks pretty exciting. What the exact layout will be for this upcoming race at Imola, I'm not entirely sure.
No, I've struggled to find a confirmed, a picture of the track layout.
But I have a feeling that it will be, they'll probably neuter some of the parts of it. Obviously, changes have been made to make it safer in general. So I'm looking forward to it, but I'm trying to keep an open mind about what it will be like. Like I say, it's a very historic, very important track.
Yeah, I'm a lot more excited for the Nürburgring, just because I think that's going to be much better suited to the current F1 car rather than Imola. But I will be pleasantly surprised. And I'll tell you what will be interested about Imola is only having a one practice day. Oh no, it's just a Saturday and Sunday, isn't it?
Do they not have any free practice sessions?
Yeah, I think it's practice on the Saturday morning, qualifying, and then race. One practice session. They're binning off Friday, which will be interesting because races which have been, practice sessions which have been red flagged on a Friday due to rain or have been rained off and they've got no data have again improved the performance of the race. So hopefully we'll be in for a good surprise.
Part of me wonders why they don't do that anyway.
Exactly. Saves costs, saves money, gives the team one extra day to prepare, or gives the team 1 day extra off. It's a win-win-win,
and potentially more drama because teams are less prepared.
Absolutely,
they have a bit less data. Right.
Couldn't agree more. So Imola's on there. I'm glad to see it back, and I will update everyone after the Grand Prix, which is happening in a couple of weeks' time at the end of October, and hopefully it's a good race. But that's it. That's all the tracks I would like to add to the calendar.
Yeah, me too. I tried to keep it sort of realistic. I tried to keep it as tracks that could actually conceivably come back onto the calendar because you could throw in a load of classic ones like Watkins Glen or something. I suppose there's a couple of other conceivable ones like Adelaide, but I quite like Albert Park, so I wouldn't necessarily want to see it replaced. There's ones like Magny-Cours, which would arguably be better than Paul Ricard. Although Magny-Cours also had a bit of a reputation for being not super duper exciting.
But neither is Paul Ricard.
So yeah, it's tried to keep it fairly realistic. So I've ended up with pretty much everything that I want to add there. Obviously, it'd be a bit of maybe a shorter calendar overall because we've wiped out quite a few races.
We took off a lot more races than we added, didn't we?
Yeah, it certainly feels that way. Especially seeing as some of them are already coming back, even if it's only for this year. But
yeah,
some of them would be nice to see them again.
One I did forget to mention was the adapted Bahrain ring. Is it called the Bahrain ring or the Bahrain outer ring?
It's like the outer ring, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to a sub 1 minute qualifying time or a sub 1 minute lap time when they're even at their racing pace. 20 cars, less than 60 seconds over a lap. done me absolute carnage. It's basically four straights. But
Yeah.
there's actually 3 straights, and there's a little kink in the top part. But that I'm very much looking forward to.
It does have the potential to be a wonderful mess.
It's done a wonderful mess, which is a wonderful safe mess. That's exactly what we want in Formula One at the moment.
Yeah.
Disrupt that championship.
Well, that was fun, throwing in our suggestions for the tracks to go and tracks to come back onto the calendar. Perhaps you've got some tracks that you'd like to see leave, or perhaps you have something to say about our choices. Or whatever it is, feel free to throw comments down below on YouTube, or send us a tweet at RacePerMinute, or you can email us at info@raceperminute.com. We do encourage that people record themselves asking their questions and comments and email that audio file to us so that we can play it on the show. You might have seen one of our ardent followers, Dave Doherty, sent us a video once before, and we'd like to get more people doing that because we want to try and feature people on the show and get you involved as much as possible. So maybe give that a try. You can also give us a rating and review on your podcast provider. That would be super helpful. And subscribe to us on YouTube as well if you're watching the video. And we're thinking of doing a few more of these sort of hypothetical fun ones in the future, seeing as this was a bit more lighthearted and we can just come up with some crazy ideas. But thanks very much for joining us, and we hope to see you next time.
See you next time.